In today's video, we delve into the spine-chilling realm of eerie work stories that will send shivers down your spine. Prepare yourself as we explore supernatural themes that include encounters with ghosts, tales of giants lurking in the shadows, and unsettling experiences that defy explanation. These narratives are not just figments of imagination. They are accounts from individuals who have faced the inexplicable in their workplaces. The atmosphere is thick with tension as we recount these chilling tales, each one more haunting than the last. From flickering lights in abandoned offices to the feeling of being watched in empty hallways, these stories will keep you on the edge of your seat. As we journey through these unsettling experiences, we invite you to immerse yourself in the eerie ambience that surrounds them. What happens when the ordinary world of work collides with the supernatural? The answers may terrify you. So, brace yourself for a collection of terrifying tales that will make you question what lurks in the corners of your own workplace. Are you ready to uncover the chilling truths behind these eerie encounters? Stay tuned as we unravel the mysteries that lie within these haunting stories. At the heart of this unsettling experience lies a quaint plant nursery, a seemingly serene place filled with vibrant flowers and lush greenery. The protagonist, a young horticulturist named Sarah, had always found solace among the plants, believing that nature held a certain magic. However, her initial disbelief in the supernatural made her skeptical of any strange occurrences. The nursery, with its rustic charm and the sweet scent of blooming flora, felt like a sanctuary, a refuge from the chaos of the outside world. Yet, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the rows of potted plants, an unsettling atmosphere began to envelop the space. One fateful evening, while Sarah was tending to the plants, she noticed an old woman wandering through the aisles. The woman was draped in a tattered shawl, her frail figure hunched over as she examined the flowers with an intensity that sent a chill down Sarah's spine. There was something about the woman's presence that felt out of place, as if she had stepped out of a different time. Sarah brushed off her unease, attributing it to her overactive imagination. After all, the nursery was a public space, and it wasn't unusual for people to come and go. However, as the old woman approached her, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of fear wash over her. The woman's eyes, clouded and piercing, seemed to look right through Sarah, as if she could see into her very soul. "These plants," the woman rasped, her voice barely above a whisper, "they hold secrets." Sarah's heart raced, and she felt an inexplicable chill creep up her spine. The old woman's words hung in the air, heavy with an ominous weight. Sarah tried to engage her in conversation, but the woman merely smiled, a slow, unsettling grin that revealed a mouth full of missing teeth. It was then that Sarah's disbelief began to waver, replaced by a gnawing sense of dread. As the encounter continued, Sarah's emotional turmoil escalated. She felt trapped in the nursery, the walls closing in around her as the old woman's presence loomed larger. The once comforting sounds of rustling leaves and chirping birds faded into an eerie silence, amplifying the tension in the air. Sarah's mind raced with thoughts of escape, but her feet felt rooted to the ground. The old woman's gaze was unyielding, and Sarah could sense an ancient wisdom behind her unsettling demeanor. It was as if the woman was a guardian of the nursery, a keeper of secrets that were never meant to be uncovered. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Sarah mustered the courage to break away from the old woman's gaze. Her heart pounded in her chest as she made her way toward the exit, the nursery's familiar surroundings now transformed into a labyrinth of shadows. Each step felt heavy, as if the very ground beneath her was urging her to stay. But the instinct to flee was overpowering. As she reached the door, she glanced back one last time, only to find the old woman standing in the same spot, watching her with an intensity that sent a jolt of fear through her. In that moment, Sarah made the decision to leave the nursery behind. The once beloved sanctuary had morphed into a place of terror, and she could no longer ignore the unsettling experience that had unfolded. As she stepped outside, the cool night air hit her like a wave, a stark contrast to the suffocating atmosphere inside. The stars twinkled above, indifferent to the turmoil she felt within. Sarah knew she would never return to that nursery, haunted by the memory of the old woman and the secrets that lingered among the plants. The experience had shattered her disbelief in the supernatural, leaving her with a lingering sense of fear and a newfound respect for the mysteries that lay hidden in the world around her. After weeks of restless nights and lingering unease, Sarah found herself standing once again at the entrance of the plant nursery. The memories of her first encounter with the old woman haunted her thoughts, yet an inexplicable pull drew her back. Perhaps it was the allure of the vibrant flowers or the hope of reclaiming the sanctuary she once cherished. As she stepped inside, the atmosphere felt different, thicker, almost suffocating. The sunlight filtered through the glass panes, casting eerie shadows that danced across the aisles, and the air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and blooming petals. It was a stark contrast to the vibrant, welcoming space she remembered. Now, it felt like a stage set for something sinister. As Sarah wandered deeper into the nursery, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The familiar sounds of rustling leaves and chirping birds were replaced by an unsettling silence, amplifying her anxiety. Each step echoed in the stillness, and the vibrant colors of the flowers seemed to dull under the weight of her apprehension. She tried to focus on the plants, reminding herself of the joy they once brought her, but her mind kept drifting back to the old woman and the chilling encounter that had driven her away. Just as she began to convince herself that she could handle this visit, she caught a glimpse of a figure at the far end of the aisle. There she was, the old woman, standing among the ferns, her presence as unsettling as Sarah remembered. The woman's tattered shawl hung loosely around her frail frame, and her clouded eyes seemed to glimmer with a knowing light. Sarah's heart raced as she felt the familiar wave of fear wash over her. The old woman turned slowly, her gaze locking onto Sarah with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "You've returned," the woman rasped, her voice a haunting melody that echoed through the nursery. "You cannot escape what is meant to be." Panic surged within Sarah as the old woman's eerie laughter filled the air, a sound that sent chills down her spine. It was a cackling, almost otherworldly sound that reverberated through the aisles, mingling with the rustling leaves and creating a cacophony of dread. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to run, but her feet felt glued to the ground. The laughter seemed to wrap around her, tightening like a noose, and she could feel her breath quickening as the old woman stepped closer, her presence looming larger than life. "The plants know your fears," the woman continued, her voice dripping with malice. "They whisper secrets that only I can hear." In that moment, Sarah's mind raced with thoughts of escape. The nursery, once a place of solace, had transformed into a nightmare. The vibrant flowers that had once brought her joy now appeared sinister, their petals curling as if in response to the old woman's words. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, and she felt a cold sweat break out across her forehead. The laughter echoed in her ears, drowning out her thoughts and amplifying her panic. She could feel the walls closing in, the aisles stretching endlessly, trapping her in a web of fear. Desperation clawed at her throat as she finally found her voice. "Leave me alone," she shouted, the words bursting forth in a mix of anger and terror. The old woman paused, her laughter fading into a chilling silence. For a moment, Sarah thought she might have broken the spell, but the woman's expression shifted into a knowing smile, one that sent a fresh wave of dread coursing through her veins. "You cannot run from the truth, child," she said softly, her voice now a whisper that seemed to echo in the stillness. "You are bound to this place." With her heart racing and her mind clouded by fear, Sarah turned on her heel and bolted toward the exit. The nursery, once a sanctuary, now felt like a labyrinth of horrors, each corner hiding unseen terrors. She could hear the old woman's laughter trailing behind her, a haunting melody that seemed to follow her every step. The aisles blurred together as she raced past the rows of plants, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The door loomed ahead, a beacon of escape, but the feeling of being pursued weighed heavily on her. As she burst through the door and into the cool evening air, Sarah felt a rush of relief wash over her. She stumbled outside, gasping for breath, her heart pounding in her chest. The nursery behind her felt like a distant nightmare, but the echoes of the old woman's laughter lingered in her mind, a haunting reminder of the terror she had just faced. In that moment, she knew she could never return. The job she had once loved had become a source of fear and anxiety, and the thought of facing the old woman again was unbearable. With trembling hands, Sarah made the decision to quit her job at the nursery. The plants that had once brought her joy now felt like a prison, and the old woman's presence loomed like a dark cloud over her thoughts. As she walked away from the nursery, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders, but the fear remained, a constant reminder of the chilling experiences she had endured. The allure of the nursery had faded, replaced by the haunting memories of the old woman and the terrifying truths that lay hidden among the flowers. Sarah knew she had to move on, leaving behind the shadows of the past and the eerie laughter that would forever echo in her mind. In a quaint, old Victorian house nestled at the end of a winding lane, a young nanny named Emily began her new job, filled with excitement and a hint of trepidation. The house, with its creaking floorboards and ornate woodwork, exuded an air of charm, but there was something about it that sent a shiver down her spine. The parents' bedroom, located at the end of a long, dimly lit hallway, seemed to radiate an unsettling energy. The door was always slightly ajar, and Emily often caught glimpses of shadows flitting across the walls, making her heart race. Despite the beauty of the home, an inexplicable sense of unease settled over her, especially when she was alone in the house with the children. The family had 2 young children, a boy named Oliver and a girl named Lily, both of whom were bright and lively. However, it didn't take long for Emily to notice that they often spoke of things that made her skin crawl. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Oliver turned to her with wide eyes and said, "Did you see the lady in the window?" Emily's heart skipped a beat. "What lady?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "The one in Mommy and Daddy's room. She waves at me sometimes," he replied innocently. Lily chimed in, "I saw her too. She has long hair and a pretty dress." Emily forced a smile, brushing off their comments as the product of vivid imaginations. Children often conjured up fantastical stories, she reasoned, but the unease lingered in the back of her mind. As the days passed, the children continued to share their strange experiences. One night, while tucking them into bed, Lily whispered, "The lady told me to come play with her." Emily's heart raced as she felt a chill sweep through the room. "What do you mean, sweetie?" she asked, trying to sound calm. "She said she's lonely and wants a friend," Lily replied, her eyes wide with innocence. Emily's mind raced with questions. Who was this lady? Why was she in the parents' bedroom? The children's stories began to intertwine with her own feelings of unease, creating a web of tension that made it difficult for Emily to shake off her apprehension. The mother, Sarah, also reported strange occurrences that added to the unsettling atmosphere. One evening, while Emily was preparing dinner, Sarah entered the kitchen with a worried expression. "Have you noticed anything strange in the house?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Emily hesitated, unsure of how to respond. "The children have mentioned seeing someone in your room," she finally admitted. Sarah's face paled, and she glanced toward the hallway, her eyes filled with concern. "I felt it too," she confessed. "Sometimes I hear whispers at night, and I swear I see shadows moving." The 2 women exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of their shared experiences hanging heavily in the air. Despite the mounting tension and the unsettling stories, Emily found herself drawn to the children. They were sweet and affectionate, and she felt a sense of responsibility to protect them. The thought of leaving them in a house filled with unknowns gnawed at her conscience. She had taken this job to provide for herself, but it had quickly become more than just a paycheck. It was about ensuring the safety and happiness of the children she had grown to love. Each time she considered quitting, the image of their innocent faces filled her mind, and she felt a surge of determination to stay. One particularly stormy night, as rain lashed against the windows and thunder rumbled in the distance, Emily sat in the living room with the children, trying to distract them from the tempest outside. As they played a board game, the lights flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows across the room. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the parents' bedroom, causing all 3 of them to freeze in place. "What was that?" Oliver whispered, his eyes wide with fear. Emily's heart raced as she exchanged a glance with Lily, who looked equally frightened. "It's probably just the wind," she said, attempting to sound reassuring, though her own heart was pounding in her chest. Gathering her courage, Emily stood up and made her way toward the parents' bedroom, the children trailing closely behind her. As she approached the door, she felt a cold draft sweep through the hallway, sending chills down her spine. The door creaked open slightly, revealing the dimly lit room. Emily hesitated for a moment, her instincts screaming at her to turn back, but she pushed the door open wider and stepped inside. The room was in disarray. A picture frame lay shattered on the floor, and the curtains fluttered as if a breeze had swept through, despite the windows being closed. "Stay close," Emily instructed the children, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. As they entered the room, the atmosphere felt charged, as if something unseen was watching them. Emily scanned the room, searching for any signs of what had caused the disturbance. "It's okay," she said, trying to reassure both the children and herself. "Let's clean this up." As they began to pick up the broken pieces of glass, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. That night, as Emily tucked the children into bed, she felt a renewed sense of determination. The strange occurrences and the unsettling atmosphere had only strengthened her resolve to stay. She couldn't abandon Oliver and Lily to face whatever haunted the house alone. They needed her and she needed them. The bond they had formed was too strong to break, and despite the fear that gripped her, she felt a sense of purpose in protecting them. As she settled into her own room later that night, Emily took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever lay ahead. The house creaked and groaned around her, but she refused to let fear dictate her actions. She would confront the unknown, not just for herself, but for the children who had come to rely on her. The unease that had initially filled her heart began to transform into a quiet resolve. Whatever secrets the house held, she would face them head-on, determined to uncover the truth and protect the innocent lives within its walls. In the heart of upstate New York, where the sprawling forests met the rugged mountains, a young adult named Jake found solace in the isolation of his family's old cabin. Nestled deep within the woods, the cabin was a refuge from the chaos of city life, a place where he could escape and reconnect with nature. Each morning, he would rise with the sun, the golden rays filtering through the trees, casting a warm glow over the landscape. Jake had two loyal dogs, Max and Bella, who accompanied him on his daily adventures. Their playful barks and wagging tails filled the air with joy as they explored the vast wilderness surrounding the cabin. Jake's routine was simple yet fulfilling. He would take the dogs for long hikes through the dense woods, their paws crunching on the fallen leaves and twigs beneath them. The tranquility of the forest was a balm for his soul, and he cherished the moments spent with his furry companions. They would wander along winding trails, discovering hidden streams and secret clearings, the sounds of nature enveloping them like a comforting blanket. However, as the days turned into weeks, a sense of unease began to creep into Jake's idyllic life. The isolation that once felt peaceful now seemed to harbor an unsettling presence, especially as the sun dipped below the horizon and darkness enveloped the woods. One evening, as twilight descended, Jake decided to take Max and Bella for one last walk before settling in for the night. The air was crisp, and the trees loomed tall and shadowy, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the familiar sounds of chirping crickets and rustling leaves faded, replaced by an eerie silence that sent a shiver down Jake's spine. He glanced around, his instincts prickling with unease. The dogs, usually full of energy, seemed to sense the change in atmosphere, their tails drooping and ears perked up as they cautiously moved forward. As they continued their walk, Jake noticed an unnatural darkness settling over the forest. It was as if the shadows had thickened, swallowing the light and creating an oppressive weight in the air. The trees, once welcoming, now appeared twisted and foreboding, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Jake's heart raced as he felt an inexplicable urge to turn back, but he pushed the feeling aside, convincing himself it was just his imagination. After all, he had spent countless hours in these woods without incident. Yet, the deeper they ventured, the more the sense of dread grew. Suddenly, a low, guttural sound pierced the silence, causing Jake to freeze in his tracks. It was a breathing sound, deep and resonant, echoing through the trees. Max and Bella immediately perked up, their hackles raised, and they began to growl softly, their instincts warning them of an unseen threat. Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he strained to listen, the sound growing louder and more pronounced. It was as if something was lurking just beyond the reach of the fading light, watching him with a predatory gaze. "Come on, guys," Jake urged, trying to sound calm despite the rising panic within him. He turned to head back toward the cabin, but the breathing sound seemed to follow him, echoing through the woods like a sinister whisper. The dogs, usually fearless, were now hesitant, their bodies tense as they moved closer to Jake. He could feel the weight of the darkness pressing in around them, and the instinct to flee surged within him. As they retraced their steps, the breathing grew louder, more pronounced, as if whatever was lurking in the shadows was closing in on them. Jake's mind raced with thoughts of what could be hiding in the woods. Was it a wild animal, or something far more sinister? The fear coursing through him was palpable, and he quickened his pace, urging the dogs to follow. The once familiar path now felt like a labyrinth, the trees closing in around him, their branches clawing at the air as if trying to ensnare him. With every step, the breathing sound intensified, a rhythmic cadence that matched the pounding of his heart. Jake glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to see something emerge from the darkness, but there was nothing, just the oppressive shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly. The dogs were now barking frantically, their growls escalating into full-blown barks of alarm. Jake's instincts screamed at him to run, to escape the unseen terror that lurked just beyond the veil of darkness. Finally, unable to take it any longer, Jake broke into a sprint, the dogs racing alongside him. The sound of their paws pounding against the forest floor mingled with the heavy breathing that seemed to echo in his ears. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins, propelling him forward as he navigated the twisting path back to the cabin. The trees blurred past him, their shapes distorted in the dim light, and the oppressive darkness felt like a living entity, reaching out to snatch him back into its depths. As they burst into the clearing where the cabin stood, Jake slammed the door shut behind him, locking it with trembling hands. He leaned against the door, gasping for breath, his heart racing as he tried to process what had just happened. The dogs were panting heavily, their eyes wide with fear, and Jake could feel the adrenaline still coursing through his body. He glanced out the window, half expecting to see something lurking in the shadows, but the woods were silent once more, the darkness settling back into its eerie stillness. Jake's mind raced as he tried to rationalize the experience. Had it been a figment of his imagination, a trick of the mind brought on by the isolation? Or had he truly encountered something unnatural in the woods? The questions swirled in his mind, but one thing was clear. He could no longer ignore the unsettling presence that had begun to haunt his peaceful retreat. The woods, once a sanctuary, had transformed into a realm of fear, and Jake knew he would have to confront the darkness that lurked just beyond the safety of his cabin. As he settled onto the couch, the dogs curled up beside him, their warmth a comforting presence in the aftermath of the chilling experience. Jake took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. He couldn't let fear dictate his life. He had come to this place to find peace, not to be consumed by terror. But as he glanced out the window once more, the shadows seemed to dance in the moonlight, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness was still watching, waiting for the next opportunity to reveal its true nature. In the quiet outskirts of a small town, where the remnants of a once thriving golf course lay in disrepair, a golf ball diver named Tom made his living. His job was unconventional, to say the least. He would wade into the murky waters of abandoned ponds and lakes, retrieving lost golf balls for resale. It was a niche profession that had its challenges, especially during the pandemic when many golf courses closed their doors, and the demand for golf balls dwindled. Yet, Tom found solace in the solitude of the job, the rhythmic splash of water, and the thrill of uncovering hidden treasures beneath the surface. As the world grappled with uncertainty, Tom's routine became a lifeline. He donned his wetsuit and gear, ready to dive into the depths of the overgrown course, where nature had begun to reclaim what was once manicured lawns and pristine greens. The air was thick with humidity, and the scent of damp earth mingled with the faint aroma of decaying leaves. The abandoned golf course was a ghost of its former self, with weeds overtaking the fairways and trees encroaching on the once open spaces. It was eerie, almost haunting, as if the land itself mourned the loss of its purpose. On this particular day, Tom arrived at the course, the sun hanging low in the sky, casting long shadows across the landscape. The silence was palpable, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant call of birds. As he made his way to the first pond, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The atmosphere was thick with an unsettling energy, and he felt a chill run down his spine. Shaking off the sensation, he focused on the task at hand, slipping into the water with a practiced ease. The water was murky, visibility limited to just a few feet. Tom felt around the bottom, his hands brushing against the slimy algae and the occasional rock. He had grown accustomed to the darkness, but today felt different. As he dove deeper, he noticed something unusual. A golf cart half submerged in the water, its faded colors barely visible beneath the surface. Curiosity piqued. Tom swam closer, his heart racing with the thrill of discovery. The cart was old and rusted, a relic of the past, and he wondered how it had ended up in such a desolate place. As he examined the cart, he felt a strange sensation wash over him, as if the water itself was alive. The eerie silence of the course seemed to deepen, and he could hear his own heartbeat echoing in his ears. Suddenly, a loud splash erupted nearby, causing Tom to jerk his head up, his instincts kicking in. He quickly surfaced, gasping for air, scanning the area for any signs of movement. The water was still, but the feeling of being watched intensified, sending a wave of unease through him. Tom shook his head, trying to dismiss the fear creeping into his mind. "It's just the wind," he muttered to himself, though he knew deep down that the air was still. He took a deep breath and dove back under, determined to focus on his work. As he rummaged through the muck, he felt a sudden tug on his leg, a sensation that sent a jolt of panic through him. He kicked instinctively, breaking the surface once more, his heart racing. "What the hell was that?" he gasped, looking around frantically. The water was calm, but the feeling of dread lingered. He decided to head back to the shore, the unease gnawing at him. Just as he began to swim, he heard it. A low, guttural sound emanating from the depths, a noise that sent chills down his spine. It was unlike anything he had ever heard, a haunting melody that resonated through the water, vibrating against his chest. Tom's instincts screamed at him to flee. He kicked harder, propelling himself toward the shore, but the sound grew louder, echoing in the stillness. It was as if something was pursuing him, lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to strike. Panic surged through him, and he could feel the water closing in around him, the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. As he reached the edge of the pond, he felt a sudden rush of cold water wash over him, and he turned to look back. The surface rippled violently, and for a brief moment, he caught a glimpse of something dark and massive moving beneath the water. It was a shadow, shifting and undulating, and Tom's heart dropped as he realized he was not alone. The creature was there, lurking just out of sight, its presence palpable and terrifying. With adrenaline coursing through his veins, Tom scrambled onto the bank, his heart pounding in his chest. He glanced back at the water, the surface now eerily calm, as if nothing had happened. But he knew better. He could still hear the faint echoes of that guttural sound, reverberating in his mind. The golf cart loomed behind him, a silent witness to the horror he had just experienced. Shaking, Tom stumbled away from the pond, his mind racing with thoughts of what he had encountered. Was it a figment of his imagination, a trick of the mind brought on by the isolation of the abandoned course? Or had he truly come face to face with something unnatural, a creature that had claimed this place as its own? The questions swirled in his mind, but one thing was clear. He could no longer ignore the unsettling atmosphere that surrounded him. As he made his way back to his truck, the weight of the experience hung heavy on his shoulders. The once familiar landscape now felt foreign and menacing, the shadows stretching longer as the sun dipped below the horizon. Tom knew he had to leave the abandoned golf course behind, the thrill of the dive overshadowed by the terror of the unknown. The pandemic had already taken so much from him, but he refused to let fear dictate his life any longer. With a final glance at the pond, Tom climbed into his truck, the engine roaring to life as he drove away from the haunting memories of the day. The golf balls he had collected lay forgotten in the back, overshadowed by the chilling encounter that would forever linger in his mind. As he left the course behind, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching him, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the next unsuspecting diver to disturb its watery domain. In today's video, we explored a series of chilling stories that delve into the supernatural, each one revealing unsettling encounters that defy explanation. From ghostly apparitions to eerie phenomena, these narratives serve as a reminder that the world is filled with mysteries waiting to be uncovered. One of the key takeaways from the first story involved a young woman who experienced inexplicable occurrences in her childhood home, where she often felt a presence watching her. This haunting experience left her questioning the boundaries between the living and the dead, emphasizing the idea that some places hold onto their past in ways we cannot fully understand. Another story featured a group of friends who ventured into an abandoned asylum, only to encounter strange noises and fleeting shadows that seemed to follow them. Their adventure turned into a terrifying ordeal, highlighting the supernatural elements that can lurk in forgotten places. The fear they felt serves as a powerful reminder of how the unknown can evoke primal instincts, urging us to be cautious in our explorations. The third tale revolved around a man who discovered an old photograph in his attic, which led him to uncover a family secret tied to a ghostly figure that appeared in the image. This story illustrates how the past can reach out to us in unexpected ways, intertwining our lives with those who came before us. As we reflect on these stories, we encourage you, our viewers, to think about your own experiences with the unexplained. Have you ever felt a presence in a room, heard whispers in the night, or encountered something that simply couldn't be explained? These personal encounters can be both frightening and fascinating, reminding us that we are not alone in our experiences. The supernatural often blurs the lines between reality and imagination, inviting us to explore the depths of our own beliefs and fears. If you enjoyed these eerie tales and want to hear more, we invite you to subscribe to our channel. By hitting the like button, you help us reach more viewers who share a passion for the supernatural. Don't forget to share this video with friends and family who might appreciate a good scare or have their own stories to tell. Together, we can create a community that embraces the mysteries of the unknown and continues to explore the chilling experiences that lie just beyond our understanding. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the eerie and unexplained, and we look forward to bringing you more spine-tingling content in the future.